Hello and welcome to a special edition of World Talks coming at you from Brussels. My name is Sascha Fahrbach.
My name is Angela Skujins.
What we're going to be doing is wrapping up the week here in Brussels, the key issues that matter, everything from different institutions, also what's going on in the European Union as a whole. We've got you covered. And let's start. Angela, delighted you're here with me. Good to have you. Mr. Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister's very unwelcome welcome in Malta at the OSCE. Let's just see what happened there when he started speaking. In fact, certain delegates, including not only Ukraine, but also Poland, right, and Czechia walked out, and we see that now. And let's just hear also what MEPs here in Brussels had to say about Mr. Lavrov's visit.
Always be open to talking if the other side is really also open for talking. And what we have seen with Russia in the past is that they mostly used this meeting, used these international conferences just to put out their propaganda on a bigger scale, while detaining journalists, while persecuting everyone that speaks against government line. And I don't have the feeling that this goes into the positive direction here. For me, it seems like Lavrov was just given the opportunity to repeat the dictatorial Russian rhetoric once again, and therefore I would personally also oppose it.
Look, when listening to Mr. Lavrov and to Mr. Putin, it's clear that they do not talk seriously to the European Union. It's clear that none of what they are saying cannot be relied upon. A dialogue is meaningful if both sides engage with good faith. I do not have the feeling that the Russian side is engaging with good faith right now. This is why I do not see what the result of a dialogue would be right now. I think it's important for people to understand what Russia is doing, in fact, and this is why I believe it is right that the Polish delegation, the Polish minister, told clearly to Mr. Lavrov what he thinks of their behavior. And right now is the time for us in Europe to be united, to defend the values of the free world, and to make people in our countries understand that Russia is a threat to our European model of life, which is based on freedom, on peace, on prosperity, on open borders. Russia wants the exact opposite.
So strong words there, and those words I think that he was alluding to of what Radek Sikorski from Poland said about Mr. Lavrov, called him a war criminal. So not.
And what's interesting as well is that the EU has actually slapped sanctions on him, but not travel bans, which allowed him to go to this event.
Yeah. And it's, I think, also worth noting that it was his first trip since this invasion began into the European Union. But also reminds me very much of this ICC warrant out against Putin, right? And how that's already not really being enforced by some countries. So it just reminded me of that a little bit. But I mean, certainly strong condemnation, but at the same time, it's a difficult choice here. In the Parliament, it was clear that they did not want to really have dialogue here with Lavrov, with the Russians, but I think ultimately here, this is going to, I think, very much be on the agenda in Brussels on how to proceed with Russia. And I think with defense, we're proceeding in one way for sure. But what do you think Brussels' policy is towards the Kremlin right now?
I mean, I think that the EU has been pretty firm in supporting Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. We saw that with the Defence Commissioner, his first briefing with the Defence Subcommittee. He kind of raised that there was urgency to support Ukraine, and he said that that would be possible through the EU ramping up production and the financing of that production. But what's interesting is that all of these topics that we're kind of talking about this week, there is a through line of Russian interference, and I think that goes to our next topic that we're going to talk about.
That's exactly right. So Russian interference. Let's go look at Georgia, and I think some of these scenes now terrible on the streets, terrible in the way that there's clamping down on oppositions. Here we see well over into a week now of people going into streets, waving European flags, Georgian flags, calling on that government to step down. They're angry. I mean, this is really a movement that has not been seen before. And at the same time, looking at terrible, terrible clampdown of opposition, I think we'll also see here what's happened here to a key opposition leader here who was detained by authorities, by police quite brutally as he was trying to get into his office there. And of course, what happens in Georgia, this is connected to a resolution that was passed right here, well, actually in Strasbourg at the European Parliament not so long ago, criticizing about backsliding of democracy in Georgia. So it was interesting to hear what MEPs had to say about what's next for Georgia and if they will ever go and join the European Union. Let's take a listen.
The regime in Georgia is clearly anti-European, it is pro-Russian, it is autocratic, and they're just using any developments around as arguments to justify their actions. The European Union is doing the right thing by supporting the people of Georgia, by not supporting an anti-European and autocratic government, and the European Union is ready to continue the European integration of Georgia, but Georgia needs to be led by a government which respects European value, which respects commitments. We are seeing Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, and other candidate countries progressing on their path towards Europe, and we're seeing Georgia lagging behind.
We have to stick to our word, and in this resolution and in all the proceedings that we did, we strongly supported the democratic movements in Georgia, and we condemned the pro-Russia, anti-democratic moves of the government, and therefore I think right now we should not back down. And of course we cannot go forward with a membership process with a government that does not want to have this membership process. So I think we have to accept what happened. It is a logical reaction, not that I support it, but logical reaction to our resolution, and I think we should double down now, keep our word and support the people fighting for their freedom in Georgia, and show them our support with even more similar resolutions.
More resolutions. For sure, this has Brussels worried, though, and I think that if we look at what's happened on the streets, what do you think? Sanctions? That's kind of being touted.
Well, a couple of MEPs have suggested sanctions, but we've heard some strong comments from the EU's top foreign policy boss, Kaja Kallas, and the Enlargement Commissioner, Marta Kos. They reiterated that they said this kind of signals a democratic backslide, but they also said they always welcome Georgia if it ever wants to restart those talks.
Mm-hmm. But now also, if you look at it, it's a bit of an impasse right now, right, in terms of what we're seeing. And the terrible scenes on the streets as well.
But I mean, it kind of gives you hope because, you know, a lot of people are on the streets, and what we're hearing is that the will of the people suggests that they want to be a part of the EU. So I guess we'll wait and see whether the politicians are receptive to those calls.
Key points, Angela, major topics here that we're probably going to be covering more of in the next weeks to come. But tell me, what's something that stuck out for you if we look at this past week here in Brussels?
So what was particularly interesting was that this is the first week of the EU commissioners getting on the tools, starting their 5-year mandate. But one of the former EU commissioners for justice, Didier Reynders, has been caught up in a probe that's been confirmed by the Belgian authorities. And other media outlets are reporting that it is for alleged fraudulent behaviour while he was helming the National Lottery Organisation. Now, that hasn't been confirmed by the authorities. This is just what some media outlets are reporting. And the EU Commission has also come out and said that they have no position on this and that they had no knowledge that this investigation has been occurring over the last couple of months.
Well, I think there was one particular person, though, who celebrated this sort of news. I mean, that's Viktor Orban, who very much, I think, has used that moment for his own advantage. But, of course, it's a serious allegation. We have to wait for the probe to conclude, as you said. But I know that this week, Viktor Orban very much, I think, celebrated this and used it for his own political purpose, saying how corrupt, Brussels is. But, that's nothing new from Viktor Orban.
It's a win for Budapest.
Yeah, so let's see how it goes. But we have that Polish presidency coming up very soon, of course. That starts in January, and I think that's going to be really key. Just briefly, I know there was an event this week as well. Why don't you tell us about that briefly?
Well, when we were discussing the big news of the week, I suggested that this has been the Polish presidency's soft launch into their, when they helm the EU Council on the 1st of January. And this kind of culminated with the event, which talked about what the 6 months is trying to achieve. But the soft launch is also we've seen a lot of media reports which has included leaks from the Polish presidency officials. And that's why we have come to believe that this is, they're kind of ramping up. They're ready to talk about security. They're ready to tackle security in food security, in economic security, as well as defence, which I think is the main cornerstone of what Poland and Warsaw have been focusing on for, I think, the last 12 months at least.
Yeah. Well, very much, I think security, that's one of the main things. That's also what the Commission will focus on. Von der Leyen has mentioned that many, many times. So we'll get more of that, especially what Kaja Kallas, what Mr. Kubilius, the new defence this commission will do, but we'll cover that another time. So with that, there's many key issues that we wrapped up. Of course, there's more. Thank you so much, Angela, for helping with all this.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. That concludes this Brussels Roundup for World Talks. We'll have much more, so stay tuned. See you next time.
See ya.